We're very pleased to welcome two presenters for today's webinar. Our first presenter will be Mercedes Unwin. Mercedes is the Program and Resource Manager at Agscape. In her role at Agscape, Mercedes is responsible for the management and delivery of Agscape's flagship programs, which include the Teacher Ambassador Program, Think Ag Career Competition, and the Business of Food. With a Master of Teaching degree from the Ontario Institute of Studies in Education at the University of Toronto, she's always had a passion for fostering the learning of food literacy and environmental stewardship. Her role with Agscape has allowed her to continue her goal of being a lifelong learner and educator, as well as being able to encourage today's teachers and youth to take active roles in the agri-food sector. Our second presenter will be Dean Anderson, who is the Strategic Advisor, Agriculture Initiatives for the Workplace Safety and Prevention Services. Dean received his BSc Agriculture from the University of Guelph here in Ontario. He has years of experience conducting research and project management in crop protection and has worked with major crops in the agriculture regions of Eastern and Western Canada and the United States. Dean has been working in agriculture, occupational health, and safety for over 18 years and is currently the Strategic Advisor of Agriculture Initiatives at WSPS. At this time, I'd like to invite Mercedes Unwin to begin our webinar, New to Agriculture, Training and Educating Your Employees on the Basics.
Will it go? There we go.
Excellent.
Perfect. So let's get started. So kind of to tell everyone about who we are and explain a little bit about why we're here a little bit more. Agscape is a charitable organization with almost 30 years of experience in providing high quality agri-food education programs. So we have a passion for making sure that everybody in the industry, as well as education, because that is our key focus, has a solid understanding about the agri-food sector, and we do that through education programs. And our main mission is really so that everybody really recognizes that the agri-food sector is a vehicle for positive social, economic, and environmental impact. And especially with the hit of COVID-19, this has very much become more of a focus where people really need to understand what's happening with their food and take more of an investment in the agri-food sector overall. So how we do it, many of us are on staff, are teachers by trade. You can tell by my bio, I'm a very passionate educator, and I pull on my experience as one for the management and delivery of our programs. And I just love being able to be a key cornerstone in making sure that everybody understands more about the agri-food sector and how they can be more involved in it. And we also provide learning opportunities on agriculture and food to post-secondary institutions and businesses, which is what I'm here to talk about, is how we can support businesses in terms of agri-food training for their new employees. So I am a teacher, like I said. That means that being interactive is like the name of the game for me. So I'm going to pick on some of our panelists and our lovely moderator, Chris, with a couple interactive activities, because let's learn by doing, and that's the best way to do it. So let's just talk about who works in agriculture and food. I have a picture of wheat, and it eventually becomes Wonder Classic white bread. So who do you think is involved in this process? Just name a bunch of people.
Has to start with a grower, right?
Yeah, the number one person, right?
Mm-hmm. Starts at the front end, starts with seed companies, seed producers, yeah, through fertilizer, their inputs, truckers, grain cleaners, handlers, bakers,
yeah,
tasters, marketers.
It's an endless amount of people, and like we need all those people to really get those end products, like just a simple loaf of bread. We think it's simple, but it's really complex what our food system is and how we get there. And we need all these people. Our food system is very diverse. We have a lot of people involved, which means that there's a lot of opportunities for people to take part in the agri-food sector as maybe a volunteer or as an employee. So 2.3 million people get food to our tables. They work anywhere, as you mentioned, machine operations, marketing, food processing. And a problem we're seeing is that there's a labor gap already, and that's growing, and that's contributing to a 2 billion loss in sales. They're projecting over 100,000 positions going unfilled in literally 9 years, which is not far away. And one of the biggest things is a difficulty to find qualified employees. And because we need such diversity in the agri-food sector, that means that we may encounter people who just don't have a background in agriculture, but we still need them anyways to make sure that we're accomplishing what we need to do. And like I said, what does that mean for the sector? Employers need to be able to hire individuals with diverse skill sets, which can really mean opportunity. That's what I think it looks like. But here we are at the reality that there's less than 50,000 farms in Ontario, less than 80,000 people working in primary agriculture. And sometimes we're seeing more of a distance between where food comes from and what does that mean and what does that look like and how does that impact us and what is GMOs and what's organic versus conventional. That's a key thing we do in terms of educating youth and teachers, but we've also extended it in terms of how can we make sure kids pursuing degrees in post-secondary school learn more about agriculture and food, and training for our new employees and businesses. So what we're having is difficulty for those without a degree or background to find accurate, balanced, and current information, and we work to supply all of those things in our programming. And the challenge for those with non-agriculture and food backgrounds and at early stages of their career is like connecting with their key audience. So how does someone who works in social media know how to select the right pictures? Do they know the difference between like a Holstein cow and a beef cow? Like those are like problems that people are experiencing because they don't have that early background or their background in agriculture and food. And kind of like let's just do like a fun little case study. You have a scenario here, and I'll ask both of you what your opinions are. So you say you're an employer looking to hire a junior graphic designer in social media and support, and your key audience is the agri-food industry and handling hot topic agri-food issues. Who would you hire? Dean, who would you hire between these two individuals? Very similar in terms of background. It's basically someone fresh out of their college degree in graphic design. The difference between them is that they have different lengths of time working at different previous employers, and they went to different colleges. So if you're trying to hire someone between these two people, who would you hire?
It's a good question. I think it depends a lot on what the job is that I'm hiring them for. Obviously, it's a bit of a communication job or a support job. I think that I would look for someone who's got some experience in trying to try some innovation in their past experience, such things as just trying new things. So much like in COVID right now, everyone's trying to do a bunch of different things virtually. Someone who comes in and they've been doing a lot of the historic without proving to me that they can think into the new, that becomes one of the issues I have. And one of the things in the ag sector to me always is being able to prove you at least have a good understanding or comprehension of what's involved in farming. To hire someone, as you were saying, to not understand the difference between a dairy animal and a beef animal, you've just ruined the entire social media message. Because farmers know it's, we used to sell chemicals and we used to in a previous life, and it was the adage that if you could hire anybody to sell stuff, but if they walked up to the farmer and said, so how's it going with the hay today, and they were baling straw, they just lost the entire conversation. And so being able to pick up and be very good at adapting that way, you can't bluff your way through that kind of a situation.
So kind of pulling on that point, say we add a couple like background experiences. Raphael has a background in retail where you worked there for 6 months, and Tanya has worked at dairy and cash crop farm for 6 months, and they're trying to apply for a position as a junior graphic designer with social media support. would you be more inclined to probably interview Tanya at least and maybe potentially hire her?
I think interviewing would be very important.
Yeah.
It depends again on the sector that you're involved with. So
Yep.
if the sector is 100% tender fruit, the retailer might actually be more, the retail background may actually be more useful, because in selling to grocery stores, that knowledge of retailing may actually be a better fit than just knowing
Yep.
possibly how to grow a crop, and then if the crop they're growing is not the one that you're interested in. So I think it does come down to a good interviewing process.
It does for sure, always.
Now,
But
when
kind
looking
of
for
like,
when
go
looking for
ahead, Chris.
when looking for new employees, you're looking for transferable skills.
Yeah.
Especially as we are looking for more people to join the ag and food sector, we're looking for people that have skills that can be transferred over. Plus, of course, very important are soft skills. Those are skills you
Yeah.
don't see on a resume. Those are skills you understand and can see in an interview process, because it's important that the person you're bringing in is a good team player and can work well along with the skills that they bring in. And of
Yeah.
course, you can always learn industry knowledge.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
coming in with not knowing about the agriculture or food sector, those are things you can learn as long as you're
Yeah.
bringing in good hard and soft skills.
Yeah. So it always starts with having great soft skills in terms of who you're looking for as a new employer. What we call them is 21st century skills, in terms of like being collaborative, communication, in entrepreneurs, be able to be creative, those kind of like major soft skills. And then it comes to, okay, well, we want to teach them those hard skills and those knowledge about agriculture and food. So how can we do it? And Agscape has a solution for that to help support businesses. And kind of like what the importance is about agri-food training is that we want to enable them to apply their knowledge about agriculture and food and express confidence. As Dean, you were saying, like being confident where you're talking to a farmer and know what you're talking about goes wonders in terms of building a long-lasting relationship and maintaining them as a client for long term, depending on whatever your job is. So that kind of supports the employee in terms of providing that knowledge when they get hired on, but in the end supports the management team, because you're getting a return on your investment by providing that training to that employee. When they have great soft skills, you give them that foundational training when they first get hired on, and then they become a long-lasting successful personnel for you, because they're able to build successful relationships earlier on in their career than potentially it'd take longer for them to maybe learn down the road as you get more learning a couple of years into the job. So kind of I'm introducing to everyone and talking about here is our business of food e-learning platform. So we have a course that we offer for those seeking to increase employees' foundational knowledge in agriculture and food to best prepare them for working in the agri-food sector. So what this course is, it's an online course. Employers could actually like come to us, purchase a subscription, and they'll be able to give access to their employees so that they can get that foundational knowledge so that they can have confidence when talking to people in the sector and make sure that they're successful in their position early on in their career, and that it will in the end lead for them to be more happy with their performance level when they're given the skill sets to be successful from the get-go. And here, like I said, the reality is we're employing people with diverse transferable skills, and not all of them will have backgrounds in agriculture and food. So as employers, it's our responsibility to make sure we're providing them the tools to be successful. And the key features of our online course is that it's self-paced, directed. They can have 24 access, can be provided to your employees. It can be completed in 50 to 60 hours, depending on overall commitment level of the employee. The topics are very wide-ranging that they get access to. So they're learning about things like local food, food safety, conventional and organic farming, animal health and welfare, agriculture in Canada, climate change, environmental initiatives, and there's more modules as well that's included. And then at the end of it, once they've completed or met the criteria of the online course, they'll receive a certificate of completion that can be provided to their HR and management to show that they've completed the course, they have that knowledge, they've been tested, there's quizzes, discussion threads, resources, videos, all included within the online course. So management will know, okay, this person has completed it, they have a foundational knowledge about agriculture and food, could be added to their portfolio for that employee for reference at a later date, and just helps with the whole building of relationships between the management employee to assure them that, okay, I've done the PD that's been provided. And I wanted to share a testimonial, because testimonials speak wonders in terms of what you want to get involved in terms of online courses. And I'm sorry if I'm a fast speaker and I'm ahead of my time, Chris, but
It's quite all right. We have had a couple of questions come in actually for you, Mercedes,
yeah,
if we
for
would.
sure.
I know Agscape works in high schools, correct? High school or elementary schools, or both?
We work basically for K to 12, so we provide programming for kindergarten to grade 12 teachers and students, and then programming to post-secondary schools, as well as to businesses as well.
So somebody's asked, and because you work with a lot of young people coming up, they've asked, why do you believe certain individuals are not attracted to the agri-food industry?
Like,
do you get some pushback from people?
I do get pushback, and I do a lot of professional development with teachers where we do one-on-one workshops, and sometimes it's just how you're marketing it to them. Sometimes they don't really realize that agriculture and food are really interrelated. So sometimes when I'm with maybe more in a more urban environment with urban teachers, I talk about it in the context of like, okay, let's understand what is agriculture. Let's be honest, it's food. Like, let's start there. Do you eat food? Yes. Okay, now we're all on the same page here. We know it's important. And that's what, it's simple. It's just breaking it down and recognizing that, okay, even if you're in downtown Toronto, you're surrounded by agriculture. You're surrounded by food. You live and breathe it. And we need to really understand how you can be a part of this, because you are a part of it, whether you realize it or not, because you eat on a daily basis. And it's just framing it in a way that nobody's ever framed it to them before, because we kind of take it for granted a little bit. We don't think about it. We go to our grocery stores and it's there. We open our fridge and it's there, but not realizing the story behind it all. And I think we're just telling our stories. And I noticed that just in the past couple of years of my position and working with the agri-food industry, is that all of us collectively are doing an amazing job of telling our stories. And we're working on telling our stories a lot more about what is agriculture and food. And we're going out of some of our normal niche areas of connecting with people in rural areas who already know a little bit already about agriculture and food, and getting more involved with like urban communities, because they need a little bit more work sometimes.
Definitely important to get the word out.
I think some of it's the positioning that it's displayed to people too. So people don't understand how much agriculture now impacts us as a people. It's the #2 GDP for the province of Ontario.
Yeah.
We are developing systems of generating carbon black that's not oil-based, so it's used in inks. We're using soybean products to now generate plastics that are going into cars. Mm-hmm. My shirt's cotton. That's not food, that's something I'm wearing. But then you also have bags that are made for grocery stores from hemp. So people are not, the number of pharmaceuticals are now grown in plant materials. So that people think of it as being, and I'm going to say it, I may get emails after this, hayseed farmers. But in reality, you're not. Almost every farmer now relies on GPS. He relies on the internet for information. Greenhouses, which are one of our largest growing sectors in the province, don't operate without computers. Mm-hmm. So you need someone writing software and developing technology that can be used in a greenhouse specifically for temperature control, watering. So working in agriculture doesn't mean you're going to go out and pick radishes for the rest of your life. It doesn't mean you're going to milk a cow. How many dairy farmers now have robots? Yeah. Someone has to fix the robot. And you fix a robot in a Honda plant, you fix a robot on a dairy farm. It's the same thing. It's the same technology and knowledge. One happens to be in agriculture. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the part that hurts us, It's the same thing. We work with landscapers. People think of landscapers as a guy who mows your lawn. But we have things called landscape designers, landscape architects. We have, all LED lighting now in backyards. All of these things relate back to the plant material in the backyard. It's the same thing with agriculture. And I think that's one of the things that's hard. And I think parents are one of the worst parts for convincing kids where they should go to work. I think agriculture and landscaping, as an example, is great. If you like to be partially your own businessman, you like to work outside, it's a lot better than being for certain people, a lot better than working on the 30th floor of the TD Center. And there's nothing wrong with working on the 30th floor of the TD Center if you like numbers and sitting in a cubicle. But if you want to do these other things, agriculture is a fabulous sector to work in.
Yep, the agriculture and food sector have expanded immensely.
Yeah.
On agcareers.com, we have over 250 different career pathways that talk about education needed, job prospects, and what a typical day is. And 10, 15 years ago, none of these, or a lot of these, did not exist, or were not even on people's radar. But as you mentioned, Dean, the technology that has come in to the industry has expanded it and is opening it to so many other people to come from different walks of life to work in the agri-food sector.
Yeah, going off what you're both saying, it's a key message of all our programming, with whether it's post-secondary school students, like kids in K-12, teachers, is that agriculture is a 21st century job. It's not what you think it is from 1800s where they're holding a pitchfork and using a single furrow plow. It's not like that. It's a 21st century job that needs all your skill sets and innovations that you have. You love tech. If you like coding, go into agriculture and food. And every part of our component and a main focus of us, like our programming, is making sure that everybody understands the career opportunities open to them. So all of our programming has a focus on careers, so that I could say to a kid, like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And they're like, oh, I want to be a doctor. I was like, well, go do something like insemination technician. They're like, that sounds cool. What do I got to do there? And then it's like, it's kind of, even I can say I'm guilty of it. I wanted to become a teacher because that's what I experienced for my whole schooling career, is being around a teacher. And we want to make sure that we're getting people from the agri-food industry into schools and doing virtual live tours so that kids can actually see what agriculture is and say, hey, I want to do that because I can see that and it's real and it exists and I can do it because you're saying it's an opportunity for me. And I think that's part of our stories, is that we're showing who we are and what we do and how we're a 21st century keystone to this society. We are important.
We all have to eat every day. There's no doubt about it. Mercedes, I had one other question come in. Somebody's asked, what's the most important general skill required of somebody entering the agri-food industry? Is there a general great skill that they should bring in?
I think it goes back to soft skills, like you mentioned, Chris. It's hard to say there's a general skill, but the general skill will probably be soft skills. To have this willingness to learn, because everybody in the agri-food industry are passionate about what they do, and they'll teach you. You say, I don't know, can you tell me? And they'll be they'll go for hours, right? There'll never be an end to that once you open up that door. And I think it's just being humble, having those soft skills and having that willingness to learn. And then once you open that door for yourself, people will give you the tools to be successful. Whether it's through the business of food and management giving you this online course, whether it's just when you're having conversations with people who work in the industry saying, I don't really understand what you're saying, can you break it down for me? And I'll remember it. Promising that you'll remember what you're taking in, and just being open to being, I guess, human. We don't know everything. The agriculture and food industry is vast. There's so much information and knowledge, and not everybody knows everything about it. So, you're going to come across lots of different people. So it's just saying I want to learn from you. And that's what I think is important for whether you go into the industry as a new employee or if you're just like living your day-to-day life. I think we need to start asking questions more and looking to the people who know it, the experts, and asking those questions and not asking it on Facebook and taking what people are saying as being like the truth, because that's becoming a problem as well. Is social media is really like curving impressions, and that could be a thing where it's like someone says something about agriculture and food and they're like, I don't want to work there because this is what this person is saying. And I think we need to understand, we need to ask more questions and look for more information and look towards those experts to say, okay, is this really true? Let's like talk about it.
I think that's excellent, because both of you, both Dean and Mercedes, you've shown a passion for the ag and food industry, and it's very clear that you care and are willing to share and expand on your knowledge, expand your knowledge out to other people who are interested and may not know a lot about the agri-food sector. And that's a great testament to people in the ag industry. We appreciate that. Excellent, Mercedes. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and sharing information about Agscape. I encourage people to find out more about Agscape. If you have children who are in the education system, they should have been touched by Agscape, and it's a great learning tool. Again, thanks, Mercedes.
Yeah.
Dean, we'd like, thanks. Dean, we'd like you now, if you would please, to address health and safety training options for new employees.
So I'd start off very similar to what Mercedes did, and that is, who is WSPS? Workplace Safety and Prevention Services. For anyone who's been in the sector for a while, oh my God, someone's trying to phone me. Terrible doing work where you're on the phone. We used to be the old Farm Safety Association, for anyone who recognizes that. Before that, I mean, we've been around since actually the 40s as a committee under the OMAFRA. In 2010, we amalgamated with what people would have recognized as the Industrial Accident Prevention Association and Ontario Safety Service Alliance. We are a designated entity for education and awareness, not for profit. We have now responsibility for about 168,000 workplaces in the province. That's about 2/3 of the workplaces in the province. And there's about 4 million people working right now in those workplaces. We manage the agriculture sector, manufacturing, and services. So if you go back to Mercedes' discussion, we've got the Weston bakeries, we've got the Case IH making that, we've got the field services group, the veterinarians, oh, and the primary producers. So they're all under our bailiwick. And 90% of them are small businesses. So yes, we do work for Canadian Border Services and OLG and those kind of places, but we also do mom and pop corner stores, welding shops, and we consider family farms as part of our bailiwick too, not just places with paid work. So it's a relatively large and dispersed group. We actually have about 250 people in the company, and 100 of them are in the field as consultancy. So we've got a very good spread for what we do in the field. So as I said, we've got primary production, ag services, the landscaping and related trades, all the manufacturing, hospitality, tourism, retail. For those of you who want to know what we've been doing for the last 4 months, it's all pandemic and COVID. So if you actually go to our website, type in wsps.ca/COVID or pandemic, you will see a pile of material. We've been building it up since the SARS event, so there's quite a bit of material there. Trying to do this without losing the screen. Oh, I went too far. Shoot. Try and go backwards. There we go. So I'm going to go a little bit into the act and the boring stuff, the responsibilities of the employer. And I'm using the word shall in front of that. So that means the employer has to do this under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Their job as an employer is to provide health and safety training for their workers, provide the proper equipment and the training to use that equipment, tell you and your supervisors about any hazards in the workplace. So every worker has the right to know where they're working and what the dangers are, and then take every precaution reasonable in circumstances to protect you. That was referred to as a 25-2H in the Act. And almost about 75% of all the orders that are written on farming production sites in the province are written under this one. Every reasonable precaution, I can say this, my wife's not home. She's an arts grad. It's an arts grad, looks at someone stepping over a power takeoff and says, that does not look safe to me. What precautions are you taking to ensure that you're not going to get injured stepping over the power takeoff? And the judge, by the way, is probably not a farmer, and he doesn't understand the equipment. So he's going to go, that sounds sensible to walk around the tractor than step over the PTO. That's how the court will respond in this case. Labor law is very different from most other law. In labor law, you really have to prove your innocence because they will go, we have an injured worker. So we have an injured worker. What did you do to protect that worker? So these things that you must do are requirements under the Act, and that's exactly where the Ministry of Labor will go when they come to do enforcement. We don't have any enforcement. We try and tell you how to do your training and help you do your training so you don't end up in situations. So next slide here, hopefully I don't end up crashing the world. Training. Employers have the duty to train and provide information and instruction about all the workplace specific hazards, including your duties. This next one actually talks about appointing a competent person, such as a supervisor. Competent is a very vague word, actually, in the Act. Competent means a person who has got qualified knowledge and training experience to do the work and knows how to perform it. So in a lot of cases, we talk about having to have, for example, a certificate to run a forklift. You don't need to actually have a certificate to run a forklift. In an industrial situation, you don't. You have to be a competent operator. And that's what the Act falls to. So one of the ways that a lot of employers do it is they go to a training facility and say, I want you to train my worker, and give them a certificate. In the long run in the workplace, if that guy starts driving around and going in circles and poking holes in 45-gallon drums, he's not a competent operator. And that's your responsibility as an employer or supervisor, is to correct that bad behavior in the workplace. So you don't often need to have certificates. You do for certain things. You know, being a mechanic working on brakes in a car, you have to be a certified mechanic. But for most things in the workplace, and especially for agriculture and agri-food, you don't need to have that certificate. It's a question around competency. So you have to keep that in mind as you're training people. So you need someone who's operated the piece of equipment for a long time to do the training. Then maybe the employer hasn't used that piece of equipment in the last 10 years. So your trainer needs to be someone who can actually train on how to properly use the equipment. And there's 2 or 3 reasons for that. One is you don't want the worker to get injured. The other one is you don't want the piece of equipment to get broken. And you want to maintain the quality of production, because if a piece of equipment gets broken or someone gets injured, you stop production. So in the middle of strawberry harvest, if I break a strawberry harvester, I've really done something. If I'm in the middle of manufacturing bread and something happens on the conveyor system because someone did something wrong, you've now stopped baking bread. And what does the bakery make its money doing? Selling bread. That's so having a competent operator working under the safety precautions and directions they're given is very important to the production scale. An employer and supervisor must ensure the workers have the information, have the equipment, and are properly trained to work on the equipment. And that's just a reinforcement of that. Training is very important. I think my next slide, oops, I could almost skip that slide. Oh, where'd we go? Here we go. There we go. Supervisor and worker awareness. So one of the first things that any employer in the province should do, not just in farming, not just in food production, is there is mandatory worker training awareness, came out in 2014. And I'll look at Mercedes and Chris and say, you both did this, right? Because anybody in the province has to have this. It doesn't matter if you've been working for 40 years in the workplace, you needed to do it. And anyone new coming in, and I advise anyone new who's just in high school, for example, go online, links at the bottom there, Ministry of Labor, do it, print off your certificate and hold it. We do it, we charge $15, but we'll maintain your record. So if you come back in 10 years time and say, do you have record of my training? We'll have it. Ministry of Labor doesn't keep any of that data. But what it does, the reason we've done that is young and / new workers. So the statistic here is on 25 and under. We get 70 workers in the province injured every day in Ontario. So this mandatory awareness training was to try and make sure that workers in their first week of work got basic knowledge of how to recognize a hazard and where to go and how to do things. And if you're a supervisor, you will need a special one because it's helping identify and tell people how to identify a hazard. This is the same for anyone who's starting a job new. So if you haven't done something for 6 months, consider yourself new. And I'm going to use the example of, I often use the example of backing a combine out of a shed. You parked it really quick and easy. It took you a while to get it back out with the header on and try and move around. The other example would be, water skiing or riding a bike. You pick it up really quickly again after you haven't done it for a whole season. But that first time you put your water skis on and get out there in the water, you're not an expert water skier anymore. So you need to get refreshed and you need to make people aware of things, and things change. You buy a new piece of equipment and the person isn't aware there's a new piece of equipment in the last 6 months. So you need to sort of retrain and re-aware. You don't need to do it as much as you would for a full training program, but you need to make sure people are aware of things. And effective training, and I think this is probably the most important slide I have of everything today, Chris. Farming is a very unique workplace. We've heard discussions, Mercedes made a couple comments, you did too, Chris. We have a lot of seasonal workers, a lot of high school kids, a lot of offshore, which is down at the bottom there, the foreign workers. English is not the first language. We end up with a lot of young people. Think of a detasseling team in corn. Think of, people are going out and picking strawberries right now, or first-time asparagus pickers. It's very unique and it's very hard to come up with distinct things. But one of the things that we need to do, and we do this a lot in agriculture, we train by demonstrating. So usually you hire a person to do some relatively specific jobs, especially in their first week or couple weeks. So what we often do is we demonstrate how to do it. The example I'll use is planting a tree for a landscaper. You want to make sure the hole's dug deep enough, the soil's amended properly, they're watered properly, they're staked properly. One of the reasons for the landscaper will be he doesn't want to have to replace the tree in 6 months because it dies. But the other reason is you want the worker to be able to keep doing that job day in, day out. And so you're going to train them on how to lift properly. You're going to teach them how to dig the hole properly. So this is ergonomics. Ergonomics are half our injuries. So you're going to not do one thing, but you're going to watch them. And then as a supervisor, which is down further, supervisors then correct bad behavior or bad actions. So if you've trained them and you haven't done a good job of training them, they'll be doing it wrong. Take that opportunity quickly to correct the activity. Because if you just let them keep on planting trees, you will have to replace trees at the end of the year. So if they're doing it wrong and lifting incorrectly, or need 2 people to lift something, then as a supervisor, you need to stop it and say, look, you need assistance. Don't try and man up and go through this, because I need you planting trees in a month. I don't want to have to hire someone else and train them. And that goes, and I think you can take that to almost any other position you can think of, why you would do that. But in agriculture, one of the big advantages of that is by demonstrating how to prune grapes, as an example, you don't need a lot of English. You're showing them how you do it. You can count 1, 2, 3, and you can slowly learn uno, dos, tres, and show people how to do things. But you need to go through the process and you need to make sure they keep doing it right. If they stop doing it right, that's the job of a supervisor. It's not to be able to say, we're going to take a break at 12 o'clock. It's the ability to say, we're going to do the job this way. And this is how we do the job. And one of the things that is only written on there in one word, and that's document. I often recommend to any employer that they at least have a checklist. And the checklist is, I did this and this and this, and turn it over on the back side. And if you train 6 guys at one time, write their names down and put a date on it. And that's a training record, because one of the things that the Ministry of Labor wants is to know you did it. Ultimately, the Ministry of Labor will go to your workers and see if they know the topic. If they don't know the topic, they're going to order you to go back and retrain. That's going to be the first order. You don't get fined. You don't get anything else. They're going to tell you to go back and retrain. If you don't have a training program, they're going to go, well, I want to see what you're training them on. So there's going to be these orders and a whole bunch of things you need to do, and they're all paperwork. They're all paperwork. Sadly, that's what they are. But if you do the right job and something occurs and they actually go straight to the worker and the worker goes, oh yeah, this is the way they told me to do it. Let me show you how they told me to do it. And they do it right. The Ministry of Labor will look at it and go, you know, the training program seems to be working here. So it was an incident, a sharp piece of equipment, a piece of equipment broke, things like that do happen. And they understand those kind of things. So that's
Dean,
yep.
Dean, we actually had a question come in about training.
Whoops.
As an employer, what would get missed often in the onboarding process of new employees, perhaps, that don't have an agriculture or food background? Is there something that sticks out that is probably missed most often?
I think some of it is the ability to, it's an attitude. So one of the problems that we often hear about is machismo. And I think some females have just as much machismo as guys do. But you tend to assume you've hired the kid from across the road and he comes to work for you and you assume he knows how to do it because he did it for his dad. And I'll stay in the masculine one here for you, Mercedes. But his dad has a green tractor and I have a red tractor. And guess what? The levers are different. The colors on the knobs shouldn't differ much. But the way the clutch works, the way the brakes work, the way that maybe the setup on the hydraulics might be reversed. There are standards, but sometimes farmers do some tinkering and fix things. So what you need to do in your workplace is make sure they're familiar. So even if it is someone who's been working on a dairy farm all their life and they're now 20 years old and you're hiring them, you don't assume they know your workplace. So you need to go down through it. It's not the same level of training as hiring some kid out of high school who's never been on a dairy farm. That's a different level of training and understanding, but you need to make sure they know the dangers. And so that's this idea of what are the hazards, what are the uniqueness around your workplace. Maybe their dad transferred grain using a vacuum, you still use augers. Augers got a lot of different hazards to them than vacuums have got. So that telling them the uniqueness of your workplace, I think, is very important, and not assuming. And the other thing is making sure that people know that there's a culture in your workplace of asking. If you don't know, please ask. Most, and I'm going to refer to farm producers now, they don't want any of their workers to be hurt. It's entrenched. They often feel workers are like their family. They don't want equipment to get broken because that's a major cost of production. And let's say you're a dairy farmer and something goes wrong with your feeding system. So you still got to milk your cows twice a day, but now you still got to feed your cows, but something's been broken in the system. And it's because you didn't ask a question. So asking questions, yes, some farmers, and I can think back to my uncles, are a little gruff, but they really aren't mad at you. They're frustrated. They're frustrated with everything else that's in their life. But making sure people know, if you don't know, ask. And then know that the first aider is my wife and she's in the house all the time. She doesn't work in Walmart in the afternoons. And the first aid kit is here. And it's okay to use the first aid kit, but tell me if you've used something in the first aid kit, because the next person may need something that's there. And those things are that kind of understanding in a workplace. I hope I'm sort of setting the stage for the environment. But if you get, someone starts in the first day of questions and asks questions and the person goes, I showed you that already, man. Do I really have to show you again? They're going to be much more reluctant to ask the question a second time. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it is that it's, in a very standard workplace like ours, it would be the policy that's written up on the bulletin board. And our CEO would say, no, we live by that policy. In a lot of small businesses, they may not have the policy up and written, which they should, but they should have it written down. They need to explain or exude that kind of a policy and procedure to their workers, because you want workers to ask questions if they don't know. Mm-hmm. It's so many kids, if you hear the story of the kid who's killed the first day in his job, wherever it is, it'll be because someone said, go do that. And they weren't told how to lock it out. They weren't told that it's flammable or it has terrible fumes and you need to wear a mask. And you can just sort of keep going with the I don't want to make things sound dangerous, but there are inherent dangers in a lot of things we do. I hope that sort of answers the question.
Most definitely. No, that's great. It's important to have a very open and understanding environment that encourages asking questions and safety for sure. No, that's great. Thank you.
And it's bigger in a place with English second language. So that willingness to pull out your Babel phone and you speak into it and they speak into it, and to get into the nuances of something as opposed to your rudimentary language knowledge, pull out the phone. It's like admitting you don't know something. But you know what? I found that's the best thing to do in a lot of situations. I will find you the answer. I may not have the answer. Is a good attitude. I try and live by that one too. So hopefully that covers off that part of it. I'll try to get to the next slide here without crashing the world. WSPS materials and standards. We've got a lot of safety solutions. As I say, if you go to our website, which is down at the bottom, the WSPS.ca, if you just go to the .ca and don't go any further, you will get the myriad of information of industrial situations, retail situations, all of those kind of things. Put the /farm safety on it. We've got a lot of material in English and Spanish. We've got some online courses that are specific to the sector. We do have 5 or 6 consultants specifically for agriculture. They were hired, some of them over 20 years ago. We also have about 17 or 18 consultants that come from family farms. I can think of one, he comes from a dairy farm, another one who comes from a beef farm. So if we don't have the expertise in the area, we may actually have a consultant who actually his background is from that type of farming. Specific training sector, we do have an awful lot of very specific training. And so, I mean, we even have free downloadable orientation videos in English and Spanish for what people should get as part of their orientation training. Products and resources, most of our products and resources are free. The mindset in our company tends to be, if you pick our mind, it's free. If you want me to do the work, we charge cost recovery. We do get a lot of funding from the Ministry of Labor through WSIB. But if the act says you need to train your workers, if we do the training, then we do charge for training. But we can provide you a lot of material to do the training. And again, other than certification training or first aid training, most things don't have to have a certified person doing the training for agriculture, farm workplaces type thing. We do have a newsletter. It's going to be going digital. So for anyone wants, but I would go that farm safety and go, just because COVID is such an important thing. If you replace farm safety with COVID, you will get to all of our materials. There are something like 10 specific guidelines have been written just for agriculture. So using temporary help is one that was just written under COVID. So I know there's a number of them there, but they're not just a general guideline, they're guidelines specific to the sector. I'm going to end it there. Oh, stop pushing the button. I'm going to give it back to Chris here. If there's any questions, I'll certainly be willing to answer them or try and answer them.
Yeah, we've had thanks so much, Dean. That's great. It's important to know that the assistance is out there to help companies understand and how they can best impart knowledge. I've had a couple of questions come in, perhaps for both of you. One is, does the agri-food sector provide job security? Does anybody want to take that one?
I could start it off easily and say, we are going to continue to eat the rest of our lives. And we are going to continue to actually heavier on plant materials than petrochemicals, for example. So depending on what part of the sector you get in, there is definitely job security there. If you get in early, so like a number of people have got into the GPS stuff on tractors, they've entrained themselves so that now they've been doing it for 10 years. It's going to take some really good hot shot to come in and replace them. So that's the easy answer on that. Food technology, think of all the newer foods that have come on the market. So from a food processing standpoint, there's lots of new products, new granolas, new all sorts of things and tastes and flavors that have come along, included people. Equipment, the whole idea of using drones, autonomous tractors, new pesticides, new varieties. I don't think I can go almost any, if we'd had the outdoor farm show coming up in September, there'd be a whole bunch of new pieces of equipment that weren't there last year. So you think of the sector, because we're a large sector now, which people didn't think of, we're probably more secure than the auto industry. General Motors could make all the cars that are sold here and make them somewhere else. Food perishes. So we need food production locally. But there's no reason why, and say a lot of tractors under 50 horsepower are made in Europe and brought into the country. So from a job security standpoint, actual primary food production is pretty darn stable. I don't know, Mercedes, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, kind of going off what Dean you're saying is that I just read an article. They're projecting that by 2064 around that it's going to be 9.76 billion people living in the world. And reality is we're going to have to continue to increase production and find innovative ways to be sustainable in terms of our food production to help feed people. And that's going to take a lot more people in the industry, a lot of entrepreneurs, people who are very creative and globally minded, because realistically that's going to be, food is everywhere. It's not just like found in Canada, it's not just found in the United States. Every country has an agriculture and food industry, which means realistically you could go anywhere and work in agriculture and food, and there's opportunities for you. And like, it is in that sense job security, because we have to continue to feed people. We need to continue to find innovative ways to support people. And like you said before, it's like agriculture and food is larger. It's like pharmaceuticals. It's like all these other components like clothing, and we need people everywhere.
And you used the statistic of what the shortage is going to be by 2009.
Yeah.
There is more jobs than we have people for right now.
Yeah.
And that's not all manual labor. It's not just because we haven't got our foreign workers in this year.
No.
It's we have a shortage of workers in the sector.
From production to distribution to marketing to sales, it's all encompassing. There's no doubt about it. It's a huge growth industry, and security comes with that.
Yeah.
I have another question that's come in, perhaps a Mercedes for you. What information or training is helpful to make people that are not from a farm or food background to accept into this industry with passionate people? How can we avoid making people feel that they don't belong, and instead that they are valuable despite not growing up our farm or having good experience?
Well, like I said, our Business of Food online course is a great starting point that employers can use to train new employees. Other suggestions is that we have tons of resources on our website that just focus on educating people, because we go in and teach teachers, students, everybody about agriculture and food. So people can access any of those resources at the agscape.ca website. Our social media is even focused on making sure people learn about different things in agriculture and food, and that's everywhere within the food system. You can search out answers from other key players in agriculture and food, such as any of the commodity groups. They have tons of resources and supports as well. Farm and Food Care, 4-H Ontario. The resources are out there and we have them, so feel free to ask for them. Like, we kind of keep coming back to this idea of like asking questions. Don't be afraid. We'll give you whatever you need, because you just say, hey, I want to learn more about local food in Ontario, or like beef farming. I want to know more about this, and people like are excited. They want to share this information. We've done more and more live farm to Facebook lives with people in the industry talking about what they're doing, and you can ask them questions. So that's like a great way. So we do that through our Facebook as well, a couple times a month. And if anybody even in the industry is interested in participating in those, feel free to reach out to me. And people who want to learn more, that's a great opportunity to learn more, because you're asking the questions from the experts. And they want to share it. They want to show you everything.
Chris, you asked that question as you said that Mercedes and I sounded excited about agriculture. I think if you ask any producer, so whether it's at the Royal Winter Fair or anywhere, about his area of the sector, they will willingly talk your ear off. So it's the same thing. If you have questions, ask the questions, And it may be someone like Agscape, it may be someone like WSPS, it may be someone like the Federation of Agriculture or Christian
Yeah.
Farmers, or it may be Canadian Ag Human Resource Council, or some other province. We're not a big blueberry grower, but go to Nova Scotia and ask Oxford Foods. Go around, ask. And that's where you can find your, how do you, if your dad's an engineer and all you do is engineering in your house, how do you become a professional in some other industry? It's because you've asked questions, or you've shown an interest, or you've gone after an interest.
And if you don't know where to start with Dean and I. We know enough people in the industry.
There you go. Well, it's clear that
we will point you somewhere.
it's definitely clear that both Mercedes and Dean, you have a lot of passion for the agri-food industry, and we appreciate you so much presenting today with our webinar and providing your insight and knowledge for the industry. We'd also like to thank our audience for joining us today for today's webinar that's part of the Feed Your Future program that's brought to you by the OFA, agcareers.com, and careersinfood.com. You will be able to view a copy of this webinar online, and we do encourage you to share it with your team members. Toolkits have been created for both employers and job seekers to assist them with the services that are available through the Feed Your Future program, and they're available to view on both agcareers.com and careersinfood.com. We've been lucky to be joined in the Feed Your Future program by 6 interns who've brought their drive and energy to assist in delivering this program. The Feed Your Future program also includes a series of virtual career fairs that are free for companies in the food and agriculture industries to participate in. If your company is looking to hire now or in the near future, reach out to us at either feedyourfuture@agcareers.com or feedyourfuture@careersinfood.com, and one of our career concierge team members can assist you getting your booth set up. Our next employer webinar will be on August 26th, Wellbeing During COVID-19, Supporting Mental Health in Your Workplace, and we hope to see you then. You can follow the Feed Your Future program through social media or reach out to us directly with any questions you may have. Again, thank you so much for joining us today for our New to Agriculture, training and education your employees on the basics. And we look forward to having you join us again in the future. Thanks so much again, Mercedes and Dean, and I hope everybody has a great afternoon.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.